But I have another idea that I've been sitting on since like 2018.
Here we go, guys.
You know, all right. Welcome back to the Thread the Needle podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Jacqueline.
And thank you guys for hanging out with us again. This is episode 2. If you listened to the first one and you're back, thanks for coming back. We're excited for what this will turn into. We have some fun things to talk about and some cool people to introduce you guys to over the coming weeks. And so, we're excited to see where this goes. We're just having a good time with it. So, Jack has been sick.
So you're probably going to hear more of Matt talking in this episode than me.
Yeah. Voice is a little shaky, but glad to have her back. So, yeah, here we go, episode 2. And we thought this would be still early in our podcasting journey. We feel like this would be a good time to jump into the topic of getting started. So if it's a business idea, literally a podcast, a creative endeavor, a new career journey, whatever it is, just kind of taking those first few steps and putting action to it and actually getting started. I know it's tricky.
So with that said, how did we get started?
Yeah. So, I mean, we had, initial idea to start a fashion related footwear heavy brand. If you don't know, the first business we started is a shoe brand called Marciante and Company. We'll put the link in the show notes if you want to check it out. But we had an idea to start a shoe line. And, my dad had been in the footwear industry for a really long time. And so thankfully we were privileged to have that resource that already had some connections and relationships to shoe factories. And he was able to kind of introduce us, which really gave us a leg up and kind of a head start into the business, understanding the ins and outs of how the factories work, how production works, prototyping, getting samples made and choosing materials and all of that stuff. So, we had a crash course on footwear design and production pretty early on in the process, and a lot of people probably would not get that same experience. And so that's how we started. But I think most of the time when people have an idea, they're not going to have a good mentor or an expert to kind of guide them where they need to go right away.
So people who don't have that, how would you encourage them to start?
I think having a vision is more important than having a plan in the beginning. So, I think really thinking about it and kind of letting yourself dream, looking at other people around you who've done something similar, even if it's not exactly the same as what you want to do, like you have to draw inspiration from somewhere. And so I think having that vision for, even if it's like best case scenario, this is where I would love to be someday. I think that's really important because it gives you something to focus on. And then you can kind of let that be a driving motivation, even in the times when you might not know what the next step is specifically. It will give you the motivation to figure it out, because you'll think, hey, if I want to be like these people, at some point they were in this same position and they found a way. So if they found a way, I can find a way. So, but I think that motivation is the biggest thing to latch onto. And then after that, honestly, it's research.
That's really good. So with that said, do you feel like when people start, they kind of think too much on if their family and friends are going to support them? Like, what is the first thing that they need to focus on?
Yeah, I think, before you even get to like the support part of it, you have to have the like working business model, right? Like how do you structure the business? Is it going to be a website? Which website provider do you choose? How are you going to grow? How are you going to get the word out? What is your branding going to be? Like there's a lot of different steps. And again, I think that like vision is really important. The motivation is really important. Because along with that vision, it will kind of grow and turn into this is what I want it to look like. This is what I want it to feel like and sound like. And that helps you be able to pull in the details like, what is it going to be called? What is the logo going to look like? What are the colors that I'm going to use? And then you have your brand identity. What platforms are we going to be on? How are we going to sound whenever we're talking, when we're writing? Like, what is the copy going to sound like? And then that helps you have the style guide. So along like the brand identity and the style guide, now you know how it looks and feels and sounds, and you're able to start writing copy, whether it's for your website or social media posts or things like that. And so it really starts to snowball. The momentum picks up, and then, choosing a platform when you're first getting started, there's no right or wrong answer necessarily, because just getting started is the most important part. So like if you're building an online store, for example, I'm going to say Shopify is, the best solution, but there's a lot of other solutions that would work just fine, like on your first day. So I think that is a big mental hurdle that you want it to be as good as possible from day one, but it doesn't have to be perfect on day one. It's more important for it to just exist. You have to walk before you can run. You have to crawl before you can walk. And so just taking that first initial step towards doing anything is more important than it being perfect and totally polished and clean, like when you first push it out there. And I know a lot of artists and creatives are going to disagree with me on that and would push back. But from a business standpoint, from an entrepreneurship standpoint, it's the reality. Like just getting started is more important than it being perfect, because you can continue improving it later.
I think that's really good. Just starting with what you have, coming up with a clear plan, and then figuring out what your values are for like what you're trying to put out there. So I think that's really good. Yeah.
I mean, I can be a case study for myself, because we have a couple businesses that we're a few years in on, and, we're growing and improving and making changes like all the time. But I have another idea that I've been sitting on since like 2018.
Here we go, guys.
But I haven't done anything with it. It's been 6 years now, and it's still just an idea because I'm waiting for it to be perfectly crafted in my mind, before I like take a step forward. So,
well, we've started 4 of whatever ideas that you have. Like, think about it. We started Marciante and Company, Mission Leather Co. We started our podcast even after like 4 years of you wanting to start it. And then you started Pretty Decent Marketing. You have that on the side as well, which most people don't even know about.
Yeah. Surprise. If you didn't know about that yet. It's been pretty low key. So not really promoting it a ton. But yeah, I like helping people, and, I love to share what I've learned. And so I feel like both the marketing, like consulting side, and this podcast have come from a place of just a byproduct of what I've learned and how I've grown over the years, like the things that we've both learned from experience.
Yeah, I think going back, one thing we would tell ourselves is not everything has to look and feel perfect. And I think once you have like your vision, like you said, and you put yourself out there, people are going to actually fall in love with you as a person and your vulnerability versus more so the product or the service that you're trying to sell. I think if people can relate to you as a human, that's what people are going to fall in love with. And then the product and or the service will kind of come into play. So,
yeah, I mean, as long as if your product or service is quality, then just being yourself and being as transparent or vulnerable as possible and letting people see your personality, that's going to sell the product.
Going back to that question, when people start and they want their family and friends to be just as hype about like what you're putting out there, what you're inventing. Talk about that, because I feel like we went through that initially when we first started. And I think, if you don't really have a plan for your customer base, you're kind of going in a little bit blindsided, because then feelings are involved and you're not really setting yourself up for success. So talk through what people can do differently, because let's be real, friends and family are not going to be your customer base.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a double-edged sword because in the beginning you want and need that support from your friends and family. Like, it's really important to help your confidence. It gives you motivation. It's very encouraging, especially because you're in such a vulnerable place as a creator. You know, stepping out and making your project public for the first time, it's pretty nerve-wracking, and you can't help but desire at least some form of approval, right? Like, even if you're not the kind of person that craves approval from other people all the time, when you put a project out to the public, that is what you're hoping to see, is some people accept it and approve it. And so that initial wave of friends and family support is really important for that reason. And even depending on what your business is, that initial little bump of cash flow, you know, is important too, like to help you fund some of the other things that you're trying to do in your business. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that wave is pretty short-lived, or can be. And that can't be your only focus. Like, if your target audience is your immediate social circle, you're thinking way too small. And the reality is, like, you could go months or years at a time selling products without seeing someone that you know buy something if you're building a successful business. And so, you know, you just have to know it's not always going to be your friends and family buying stuff if your goal is to scale and become a business that's like a substantial size.
Yeah.
So you have to decide early on, who is going to be your widespread target audience, and then use your friends and family as more of like a testing ground or like a celebration.
Everyone like supporting you is going to look different. Some people are going to buy your product or buy your service. Some people are going to post about it. Some people are going to write a review. Everyone's support looks different. And I think once you kind of mentally know that, I think it will be a breeze, because it's just not the same for everyone.
Yeah. And it can definitely be a challenge. You know, it's easier said than done. Like, hey, don't focus on your friends and family all the time. Like, number one, because it's fun. Like, you care about those people, and, you know, it's fun to develop things or create things with people that you know and care about. And then you want them to like what you're making also, you know, like,
but then
it feels good.
Not everyone's going to like what you're putting out there.
Right.
You know, not all of our friends and family are going to like our products, and that's okay. Like, you can't get your feelings hurt about that, because at the end of the day, they're not going to be your number one customer base.
For sure. And that's what you have to get over. And like I said, it's easier said than done, especially early on when you don't have a lot of customers, and most of the customers are probably people that you know. But it's something that you have to mentally get past, like, as quickly as you can. And I think early on, you know, my toxic trait was I would go read every review and see who like unsubscribed from our email list and stuff. And you just can't do that, because again, like, you can't put that expectation on people. You know, now when we send out email newsletters, it's not for everybody. And you can't get offended if someone doesn't like the content that you're putting out and they unsubscribe,
Right.
Even if it is someone that you know or someone that's really close to you. Now, if they mark it as spam, I absolutely will go track them down and be like, hey, what are you doing to me right now? No, I'm just kidding. But unsubscribing, like, not buying your products and not liking something, you can't get your feelings hurt. As a business owner, as a creative, you got to have thick skin and just know that you're not making it for everybody.
So talk about this. Now that we're 7 years in as entrepreneurs and business owners, if there's something that you would like look back on, would there be anything that you would do differently when planning and starting our business?
It's hard to answer that question because it was a little chaotic getting started, because we got started so fast. I mean, it was like definitely less than a year, you know, process from having the idea to actually kicking it off. So in theory, I think, you know, wisdom would probably say slow down and take your time on some of the details before starting. But watching how it happened in real time, I also think that if we had waited longer, we might not have actually done it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's tough to answer that. Because like sometimes you have to go against what conventional wisdom says. And we just went for it.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of felt like jumping off a cliff at times and hoping that we could fly before we got to the bottom. But we did it. I mean, we put the product out there. It wasn't perfect. Put our website out there. It wasn't perfect. Our social media wasn't perfect. Like we didn't stick to our style guide, like for our branding guidelines and everything. Like we made a ton of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But we actually put it out there, and it gave us feedback in real time that helped us grow pretty quickly and adapt pretty quickly. And you make mistakes, you learn, you evolve, you get better. And so I don't know, I guess yes and no. Some areas I would like to say that I would do it differently, but seeing where we are now, like I don't know that I would want to change it.
Yeah. I feel like we're still trying to figure it out with website, social media, marketing.
Yeah.
It's all going to be a learning process, and we're always going to continually learn as we grow and as we evolve. So I think
always changes too. I mean, it all changes so fast that even people who are experts if they don't adapt and evolve, then they're not experts for very long, because things change so fast. And so that's another reason to just step out there and just try it. Because even if something's working a specific way right now, doesn't mean that it's always going to work that way. So you might as well just jump into the stream and be along for the ride and figure it out along the way, just like all of us.
Yeah. What would be like your advice to someone with worrying about so many people's comments about, is this going to work? Is this going to be successful?
Yeah, it's hard because, you want it to be as clean cut as, like, I have one person that I trust. Let me ask them their thoughts, and it's either thumbs up or thumbs down, and you fully trust them enough to take that advice. But it's not that simple. And even some of the people who care about you the most and they want to see you do well, or they care about your well-being the most, still don't have the same intentions and plans as you. Mm-hmm. So, for example, like if I have someone I really trust and I know that they love and care about me and they want the best for me and they want to help me make smart decisions, if they don't think like an entrepreneur, then every single thing that I say is going to sound crazy to them. And it's going to sound too risky and not conservative enough and not safe enough. So we're just still not going to align on everything. And so I think it's a matter of taking bits and pieces of advice and thoughts and, input and wisdom and concern. But then ultimately you have to process it through your own filter and decide what's best for yourself.
Yeah.
And that doesn't give you an excuse to go, do something reckless and just ignore what everyone says. I'm saying you take the feedback, you take the concern from people that you trust and care about, but you have to process it for yourself and decide, does that fit the goals that I have for my life and for myself? And then make a decision. Yeah,
I love that. It's always interesting for me because coming from the Indian culture, I'm sure you have so many stories about that. Like me starting completely something out of the norm and not taking like the safe route of like a 9-to-5 job, whether that's being in healthcare or being in business or being an engineer. Like I'm sure I had a lot of people look at me like I was crazy. You're your number one supporter, and you're also your number one overthinker and second guessing yourself. So I think the more you believe in yourself, the more we drown out the noises that are coming from wherever.
Yeah, the belief in yourself and the confidence is, as cliche as it is, ultimately that's the most important thing in taking your first step.
That's what's going to get you through.
Yeah. I feel like we can spend another full episode just talking about your background and
yes, that's going to be like a whole nother episode.
Barriers broken and stepping out of expectation and, all of those kind of things. And so, yeah, I think we'll save that. I feel like this is probably a good stopping point for the get started conversation I'm really excited for next week, though. Next week's episode will be really cool. That's our Women's History Month kickoff.
We have some surprise guests. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So, yeah, thank you guys for joining us again on the Thread the Needle podcast. Make sure that you subscribe, leave us a review if you don't mind. That's super helpful for us. And then, yeah, we'll put links in the show notes. If you are listening to this, you can also watch the video on YouTube. Also check us out on social media, and we will put links to Marciante and Company so you can check out the shoes. But yeah, appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.